of 3A Part 2, the 14th Amendment, which currently defines United States citizenship. Now, to talk about this, we have to access a little bit about our prior knowledge. Now, the 14th Amendment came after the conclusion of America's bloodiest war, which, whatever way you look at it, called the Civil War, or the war between the states, between the Union States in the North and the Southern States, the Confederate States of America. Now, although the war actually had some implications to slavery, major, the main issue of this war was actually two views of government. One side, the Union, believing that the federal government was supreme and had the right to force states to conform to federal law. The other side, the Confederate States, believing in the idea of states' rights and that states should have the ultimate say about the law. Now, the 13th Amendment followed the war, and it officially abolished slavery and any type of indentured servitude. Now, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which followed the Battle of Antietam, stated that all slaves were free, but in reality, it only actually affected certain areas, and most of the areas were areas that the Union government had really no control over. So, it outlawed slavery, the 13th, it banned all forced labor, and of course the southern states were not too happy again, even though, again, they had just lost the war, to have to conform to federal law and end an institution that was obviously very, very economically beneficial to them. So, what did the southern states do in response? They started to try to prevent guaranteeing the full rights to their freed slaves. For example, they did not gain full property rights. They did not have voting rights. They were sharecropping. They only could hold certain jobs. So the goal of the old planter class in the South was to, again, keep the freed slaves below them and beneath them in kind of an economic chart, of the highest being the former plantation owners, your farmers, your white farmers, and then, of course, your freed slaves. The 14th Amendment was passed in response to this, and the 14th Amendment ultimately defined citizenship as, this is right out of the Constitution, all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the U.S. and the state in which they reside. That's a key point, because the 5th said you were a citizen of this nation, but the 14th had to go so far and say also of the state. Therefore, your state could not strip away any rights that you had. So, again, it granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized, as we went over that process earlier in Notes 3A, and defined citizen as legally and equally protected individual under the United States and the individual state laws. So it didn't matter where you lived at the time. It could be Alabama, it could be Connecticut, Rhode Island, Florida. You were still guaranteed the rights of citizenship, and those states were not supposed to infringe on your rights. The 14th Amendment, again, said states may not interfere with it, and states may not take away your inalienable rights of life, liberty, and property without the due process of law. Now, the due process of law is established legal procedures, and the Constitution outlines this due process in the 5th Amendment as well. And it says individually equally have the right under law, no matter who you are, what your nationality, your religion, your creed, your ethnicity, whatever it is, you are all equal under the law. Some of these rights include, and this is just some of them, the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty, your Miranda rights, fair trial in the court of law with a jury of your peers, the right to legal counsel even if you cannot afford one. All these are just parts of this whole idea of the due process of law. And again, the due process of law was already guaranteed in the 5th Amendment, but because certain states were trying to take away and revoke these rights from freed slaves, the 14th had to go so far and guarantee this right to the freed slaves in each of those states. So again, in summary, the 14th Amendment says you are not only a citizen of the nation, but you are a citizen of the state in which you reside. National and state protection under the laws of the land guaranteed by our Constitution of the United States. The due process was protected over the actions of states. States must protect an individual's rights defined in the Constitution under the due process of law. Again, this is very critical because at this time, many states were trying to revoke those rights guaranteed under the Constitution to freed slaves. I hope this helped you today understand the 14th Amendment of the United States of America.